teenage drop-in centers or community centers, and those are important, crucial in fact, but no less senior centers for targeted issues like, as you mentioned, Paul, nutrition, but also certainly transportation, housing support, connecting to government services, home-delivered meals on wheels.
Meals on Wheels.
We could go on. Both for the senior who's interested, but also the family member, both either in the area or calling in from out of state.
Right, and you know, as a person now engaged in these caregiving issues, even knowing that there is relief, there is respite for the caregiver. That is, what a remarkable, I just think of all the vacations that don't get taken because you think, oh, nobody else can handle this. And yet the city can direct you to services that say, wait a second, you need a break.
Well, Sheila was just sharing before we went on camera about the perception of caregivers who are family members who are not paid and don't see themselves as caregivers, but rather as just the family member who cares for another family member. Thus, when they hear about caregiver opportunities, such as you mentioned, that's for someone who gets paid. And I'd like to be able to access those, but I'm a family member. I'm not a caregiver, and of course they are.
And absolutely they are. And it's interesting. You understand that you're giving care for a very young person, you know, a toddler or something. But somehow with our parents, and you mentioned this earlier, Sheila, about am I in the right position here, making decisions for mom or dad? Because it almost seems like you're not so much intruding as absorbing their identity.
Very, very challenging. Very challenging to provide care for a parent. And even definitely for a spouse, too. But when you're talking about parents, you're talking about someone that, irregardless of what the relationship was, whether it was positive or negative, now you find yourself in a position of lending a hand, of feeling responsible, of trying to coordinate resources. And that's where the local senior centers and the Department of Aging comes in. And I always like to think of it as like the LA, we're fairly lucky. We have lots of resources. The idea is, how do you find that entry point? How do you find that point to access of all these resources? And that's where the Department of Aging and where the senior centers come in to say, and even help in identifying, because I think when we're in the kind of the mire and the emotion of caring for someone, sometimes we need someone to sit down and say, have you thought of, you might need, I know of other families who can gently guide you through this maze and hopefully make life better for the person that you're caring for and ease, like you say, some of your stress and burden.
And this is not a unique position. You find plenty of grandparents are raising their children now, and they have health issues complicating that. And before I forget this, I want to point out to you, you can reach us directly with this 800 number, 510-2020. We'll be flashing that up on the screen. But if you're one of those persons who's saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next, call this number, 800-510-2020. Now, how about this 311 system that we have in Los Angeles? That's the neatest thing going. I mean, it's whether it's trash being picked up or senior services, you can dial 311 and find out who to call.
Yes. And I think it's been a wonderful opportunity for people who are not certainly fluent in where to find things in the government system. And as an attendant to that, as you may know, HealthyCities.org has a visual map that you can put that connects all those services into that website, and then you can get a visual of where these locations are, their contact people and phone numbers. So it's just another layer in this targeted information system.
Now, I mentioned the senior centers. There are 16 throughout the Los Angeles area. Again, if you do the 800-510-2020, that's a pretty simple number, 510-2020, you can find out where they are. Now, we had a question from Michael in Woodland Hills, and it said the following: my 85-year-old father offered to drive me to the airport a few weeks ago. This was the first time I'd been in a car with him in some years, and his driving worried me. We've all, with elderly parents, gone through this one. How do you broach this subject to a longtime Los Angelino that, driving maybe is going to be too challenging for you right now. Do you get those questions too?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of the hardest.
Yes.
Particularly living in Los Angeles.
Yes.
It's a city built around the automobile and with the highways, and getting around is certainly so important to maintaining independence.
Well, for example, AAA has a wonderful program to help with this. They see these issues quite clearly.
Absolutely, yeah, and AARP also has a safe
Right.
driving program
Yes,
too.
of course.
Too.
Yeah.
And there is a discount, as we probably know, of 10% on your insurance if you were to have a successful completion of that program.
Right.
And that may be one way. Certainly, there are multiple entry points to that discussion.
But did you even know that? Did you know that you can get a discount if you successfully complete these programs that are being offered? It's a wonderful thing.
Right.
And we have too many news reports of the tragedies of an elderly person who really has just sort of lost their motor skills. Oh, now this one. It's not sometimes just our own family. Here's from James in Sherman Oaks. 2 Valley questions in a row. My next door neighbor is a widow and has lived on her own since her husband died 10 years ago. A few months ago, a tree damaged her roof and she paid $2,000 to a supposed contractor who took the money in cash and disappeared. So how do we call on a neighbor's behalf? Where is this? Call the Department of Aging and then go from there?
I think certainly that would be a great point of contact. And there's also some great services out there in terms of legal services for seniors, such as Betzedek, which is a legal service. And they're fantastic. They have a complete elder law division, and they're fantastic in dealing and helping, again, like this whole maze, helping seniors through and really being advocates for them and helping them through something like this.
And it's a good idea to find a counselor just so you yourself know what resources are available, because it's almost overwhelming.
Absolutely.
The only corollary I've seen in my experience have been those families who have a disabled child and have lived within the system and sort of learned. But that's what's happening with our seniors community. It's quite a web.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is a challenge, Paul. Going back to your question about the person who puts the money out but doesn't get the service that they had paid for. Certainly there's layers of response to that, and we've talked about one in terms of connecting to Betzedek Legal Services, to LA Department of Aging. But I would also recommend, and this is maybe a tougher one, to call the police to let them know, because that puts a plot out on their map to see where are the scams going, and hopefully preventing the next one. That doesn't help the one that just happened. But at the same time, being able to help that person with the embarrassment of, I can't believe I did this. This isn't me. I'm not normally this way.
And that is often the sign of aging, you know, because sometimes you lose that acuity. And it is important for people to know that our first responders in this city are trained to look for signs of difficulty in our senior population, many of whom are living alone. I know it maybe is too much to hope for, but many people in that condition who are living alone right now, this is not just a life alert bracelet. It's having some ability to notify a first responder that you have special medical needs. Unfortunately, we've got to take a break right now. It's that time. So when we come back, we will continue to answer questions that have been sent in by the viewers of Aging in LA. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The biggest blessing in life is to realize your personal power.
So many of us wonder, why are we living? Well, that's why we're living, to help others.
Community work brings families closer together.
When we help each other, we all get healthier.
Doing good for others, doing positive action always comes back around and enriches your life. It's the biggest gift you could ever give yourself.
Doing good is good for all of us.
Please join us in volunteering.
Improve your health by helping others. Visit iparticipate.org.
Before approaching an intersection, so that's why 2 wrong turns don't make a right turn. Now let's learn about tailgating.
Hey, that's how I got my ticket.
You got a ticket
For tailgating? That's not good.
That can be really annoying.
Doesn't get you there any faster.
It leaves you no distance to brake.
Which makes it easier to get into a crash.
And it also may increase your insurance premium.
And I hate tailgaters.
Tailgating causes crashes. Back off.
Watch the road.
Welcome back to Aging in LA. On our program today, we are answering questions and comments that have been sent in or phoned in by viewers of Aging in LA. Our guests are Gordon Gibb, Director of Social Services at St. Barnabas Senior Services, and Sheila Moore of the Gay and Lesbian Elder Housing, the first of its kind in the nation. How cool is that? I want to get directly to some of these questions because sometimes you forget when you're in the game that it's all new to sort of the new caregiver.
Right.
Here's a lady, Liz, in South LA. I'm only 62 years old and was recently laid off due to the economy. I managed to pay for the basics, but unfortunately I've now been told I need a hearing aid and I don't know how I'm going to afford the $4,000 cost. Now, when you get a question like that, are there programs to help assist people financially for these special needs?
There are programs, not in abundance by any means, but there are programs like the Partners in Care, which is a fantastic network. They have a family care network program that helps seniors with kind of a one-time grant or stipend to help them kind of bridge. Otherwise, if there were something like this that would come up, where it would really kind of turn the tables for the senior with something that could be a one-time manage, move on to the next, kind of move on back to their living. This is something that would be perfect. The Family Care Network could.
And it's good to find someone who's knowledgeable in this because there are a lot of programs. For example, a chair can be provided so you can maintain your mobility.
Exactly.
Are these kinds of things that you get these same questions to?
Very frequently. I was just going to say, tell your listeners and watching audience to call their local senior center for resources. That's what we're about, is connecting, resourcing. And if we don't know, we'll find out.
There you go.
You know what I was thinking? That it's always very challenging when we have need to actually reach out. I mean, it's a complex kind of process to reach out and say, gosh, I need. And I think that if the viewers had an afternoon and could go to their local senior center when they may not have any specific question and just check it out and see what their local center has to offer them.
Well, I agree. You know, sometimes we talk about seniors as if their life is over and they're always needful. But many of them are truly competent and gifted people with a wealth of experience who could probably find meaningful participation by volunteering at a senior center.
Absolutely.
Very much so.
I love that community sense, that sense of community where you're bonding with other people who have, not a similar outlook. Who cares about that? The conversations would be too darn dull if we all thought the same. But a community that can share its own internal resources.
Absolutely.
Now, when they come down to the senior center, there's lots of stuff. Exercise programs.
Yes, at the heart of St. Barnabas Senior Services, and we've been in existence for 101 years in our neighborhood.
Really? A centenarian.
Yeah. Actually, we got started where today the Biltmore Hotel is. In the basement of a church. Reaching out to homeless seniors. But we've morphed over the years as needs presented themselves, and we attempted to respond. But at the heart of our work is the case management or social services. And then the outer rings are the activities and the outreach community activities that we'll have to help seniors, because we're a low-income senior population by and large.
I see.
And so to help seniors live independently and to live well and age well, being able to triage, being able to help identify the most important issues like maintaining their benefits, their financial well-being, being able to pay their rent on time, get transportation to a doctor, get sufficient warm and nutritious food. That's at the heart of it. And then from there we can build and do the activities.
Well, in St. Barnabas' case, we have this expression, as you well know, the NORC, the naturally occurring retirement community, where a group of like-minded citizens have gathered together by magic almost. And the services are available to them. I'm thinking Fairfax District, downtown, West Hollywood. a lot of this stuff we can do ourselves, and for a senior who's thinking ahead, and many do, the issue of caregivers, who's going to take care of you, can be really difficult, because who do you trust?
Sure.
Here, I just was thinking of that because of Sarah. She's writing to us from New York. I visited my father, who lives in Los Angeles, she wrote, and he appears to be doing well, except for the fact he could use some help around the house, cleaning laundry, etc. So what are the tips if a person calls from New York and says, you know, I need some non-medical in-home care, if they even know the term? Are you able to develop and maintain lists of neighborhood caregivers? Sheila, I mean, and I would think that over time, you would in fact know who the good caregivers are.
Yeah, it's an interesting question and seems simple on the initially. As I was kind of thinking and going into my kind of assessing and kind of where do you start with this? Because you have a parent who's here and an adult child who's caring for them long distance.
Right.
And so how do you help this adult child coordinate services long distance, far away? And so absolutely there are the network of services that we have in terms of identifying agencies. There's lots of questions about what might the senior be qualified for, how we go about doing this, how we link them. There are many resources out there, as well as providing with just this one question. My sense is there's probably other things going on as well, and being connected with a senior center or with the Department of Aging, help them figure out what other things might be needed besides that.
And again, don't isolate yourself. We have the 800 number. I'll say it again, 510-2020. That's pretty simple, 510-2020. You're not alone in this. People have been down this road, and I have found, almost uniquely, because I've met many young people who are in this field of senior services, and I always am amazed, how did you decide in college to help this population group? How about you, Sheila? How did you get into this?
Oh, how did I get into helping seniors?
And
how much time do we have?
Exactly.
Well, you know something? We got lots of time.
My father was an older dad. He wasn't. He was 62 when I was born, and so I saw someone who was older, who aged really gracefully and in health. And so as I went through school, I was like, well, shouldn't everybody be aging that well? And so then as I went through schooling, I was deciding which kind of path to take. I took a social gerontology course just kind of at the end and totally fell in love. It was like all the concepts kind of came through. And then I was directed to the University of Southern California, and I got my master's in social work and gerontology. And working with caregivers has been really kind of a focus of mine for many years, for over 20 years actually. And I want to say with all of this is that it's really important, I think, for those of you out there who are identifying yourselves as caregivers, who are thinking, gosh, maybe that is me, to seek out support groups, because that's another really important resource. This is another place where you can access these resources and talk to other caregivers who are saying, you know, gee, I always tell caregivers, you can talk in shorthand in support groups. You don't have to always explain everything. You can say, gosh, this is how I'm feeling today, and everybody kind of has that sense, and turn you on to other things that are going on in the community that might be helpful.
And Gordon, for you, your path to this place where you find yourself trying to help people find the resources they need?
Well, I've come from maybe a similar kind of background, but unique in the sense that for probably 20 years I was an ordained Christian minister, and therefore working in congregations from the East Coast all the way here to the West Coast. But realized at the heart of my real passion has been this one-on-one with the aging population, and of course I'm one of those.
Isn't it funny how you wake up one day and go, I am one?
I mean, old age, sickness, and death is really something that we've all been given the opportunity to live through, and hopefully it's done in sets of relationships that are meaningful and supportive. And so I saw that as really something that I wanted to continue. And certainly I had my mentors and examples of that in the field of aging. But I realized that I needed to be able to pursue this on my own and create my own path. And so I've been very fortunate now for the last 3 years at St. Barnabas to be directing that service.
It's fantastic. One of the things that I have seen is the satisfaction when you can keep a family whole unto the end and be confident that you have done everything possible for your loved one. And that's all the time we have for today's show. Thanks to Gordon Gibb, Director of Social Services at St. Barnabas Senior Services, and Sheila Moore of the Gay and Lesbian Elder Housing, who have discussed some of the most common issues that viewers have. And now, it's time for today's Senior Stat Shots. Today we'll find out what Americans 65 and older like most about growing older. 52% of you like the increased opportunity to travel. Another 52% have more time for volunteer work. 59% like the respect that is accorded to you from others. 59% look forward to less stress. 64% expect more financial security. 65% like more time for their hobbies and other interests. 2/3 will be enjoying not working, and 70% look forward to spending more time with their family. And that's today's Senior Stat Shot. The Los Angeles Department of Aging produces this program with CityView, Channel 35, so that seniors living in Los Angeles and surrounding communities are well informed on the many issues that face them in everyday life. And also to let you know of the many services that the Department of Aging offers our senior citizens. Now, we'd like to hear from you with comments on the program, what you like, what you think can be improved, and ideas for future programs. Please give us a call. The number's there on your screen, area code 213-252-4088. That's 213-252-4088. Call us with your comments and ideas. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Paul Peterson for the Los Angeles Department of Aging, the people here at CityView Channel 35, and all of our guests on Aging in LA. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Sheila, thank you so much for coming.
It's that time of year again to clear all that annoying dry brush from around your house. In the event of a fire, dry brush is extremely combustible and can explode. By clearing brush 200 feet from your home, you create a barrier, lessening the likelihood of spreading a fire. I'll still be here when you get back! Get the message. Be prepared.
Hey, buddy! You with the stupid hat! Come here. Closer. No parking! Do you know what happens when you park illegally on these narrow hillside streets? You block the street so emergency vehicles can't pass. Each year, homes are destroyed and lives are lost because of drivers like you who park illegally! And you know what else? You can get a citation! And you can be towed!
Help us get to the emergency. The life we save just might be yours. How'd you know?
The ball called.
Hey, look out for the pothole!
your channel.
It's not for vote either.
Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for Wednesday, June 9th, 2010. Let me start this meeting, as I have in good and bad days, by talking about the Lakers. And I want to congratulate the Lakers and for all people who have come from Boston to make their home here in Los Angeles. We are sorry, but not that sorry, and we're glad to be back at 2-1 Lakers on top. A very well-played game, and way to go, Los Angeles Lakers, and we look forward to a vigorous series. But Paul Pierce, for the record, was wrong. We're coming back to L.A. either for a parade or for more games. So let's hope it's both. On that front, we are here in the City Council, and I want to thank members of the public who are here with us today, who have taken time out of their day to be here in Council Chambers, as well as our viewers on Channel 35. Welcome to you as well. We are broadcast live throughout the city's cable system on Channel 35. We're also rebroadcast in the evenings for folks who are working during the day, and we have two other ways you can listen in or watch council meetings: through the computer, through the internet at our city's homepage, lacity.org. You can listen in to live webcasts of our council meetings. We also archive all of our past council meetings there as well, and we have all of our agendas and links to our city departments up there online too. And then finally, through your telephone, you can call what's called Council Phone, and that number is 213-621-CITY, 213-621-CITY, and you can listen into the council meetings. And any of our committee meetings as well are available through that service, and we have audio archives of that online of any of our committee meetings as well. Our agendas are made available 72 hours in advance or 24 hours in advance for our special meetings. Those are available here in person in city buildings through the city clerk's office or online at lacity.org. They're also available on the back for anyone here. And if you take the agendas, they're split into items that have had public hearings and those that have not yet had public hearings. For any items that have not yet had a public hearing, if you'd like to be heard, just fill out a speaker card and hand it to one of the sergeants at arms. We'll be sure to include that today. For items that have already had a public hearing, it requires a council member to reopen that in a vote of the council to have a second public hearing. But you can fill out a card for those should that opportunity arise. And finally, if you have comments of a general nature, but that have to do with the City of Los Angeles, you can fill out a card for general public comment. That's 2 minutes usually for each speaker here before us on items that are not on the agenda, but nevertheless under our jurisdiction. I want to thank those council members who are here on time. Council members Cardenas, Koretz, Labange, Parks, Perry, Rosendahl, Smith, and Wesson. We have excuses on the desk from Ms. Hahn, Mr. Reyes, and Mr. Zine. With that, we are just awaiting Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Huizar, and Mr. Krikorian to begin our meeting. Thank you to everybody who's here on time. While we wait those late council members, we will begin. Mr. Alarcon is here, so with that, please call the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Hahn, Huizar, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
All right, first order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
All right, Mr. Parks moves, Mr. Labange seconds. Without objection, those minutes will be approved. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Koretz moves with Mr. Cardenas seconding. With no objection, those will be approved as well. If we can run through the agenda, please, and council members, if I can direct your attention to the agenda for any items you'd like to call special. First items, please.
On the regular agenda, items 1 through 15 are items for which public hearings have been held. Item 2 is a commission appointment. Do you wish to hold that on the desk?
Yes, please. Let's hold that on the desk.
And there is a request to continue item 7 to June 29th.
Is there any objection to continue item number 7 till the 29th? I move that. If not, we'll go ahead and continue that. Other specials? Yes, Mr. Parks?
Until the committee report is distributed.
We'll hold 6 for Mr. Parks. So we have committee report. Mr. Alarcon? 9? Number 9. Number 9 for Mr. Alarcon. Gotcha. Thank you. Any other specials? If not, let's go ahead and take up there's no action on 1, and then if we can take up the balance of these items, please open the roll on them, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay, those are approved. Next items, please.
Items 16 through 32 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, I'm sorry, forthwith on which one?
Forthwith on 5.
Okay, we'll send 5 forthwith. If there's no objection to considering, we will have those before us. Mr. Rosendahl, call 16 special. There's also a card from the public on that. Other items with cards, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, you have cards on items 27, 28, 29, and 32.
Okay, we'll call those special for cards from the public, and we'll close the public hearings on the others. Any specials from this batch, folks? This is 16 through 32, besides 16, which was called special by Mr. Rosendahl. If There are no others. Let's go ahead then. On the balance, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Those are approved. If we can go to the next items, please.
Items 33 and 34 are the closed session items. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Mr. Parks, do you have any recommendations?
33, we can hold an open session. It's an issue that dealt with an inverse condemnation, and all issues have been resolved, and the settlement is within reason.
Okay, let's go ahead and take that up. Mr. City Attorney?
And the recommendation
Sorry.
on item 33 is for a settlement in the amount of $720,000 in the case of Sheinin versus City.
Okay. Anything to add, Mr. City Attorney? Or? That's good. Okay. If any members wish to be heard in that in open session, now would be the time. Seeing none, let's go ahead then and take the recommendation from the City Attorney. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That is approved. Let's send that forthwith without objection. That will take us back just before public comment. As per our practice, we'll take up our commissioner nomination. A familiar-looking young man in the front row. If you'd like to come forward to the desk, I'd like to recognize the chair of our Public Safety Committee, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. And it is a pleasure to introduce to you our designee and our current president of the commission, a man who has served this city well for many decades in many, many capacities, but his most recent role is one of really great significance, and that is president and member of the Board of Police Commissioners. John Mack has been a great leader there. He has worked very well, although we didn't always agree on some of the things that his former chief had to say and do, but nonetheless, he has led the commission very well and very honorably. He is not a stranger to anyone around these chambers, nor anyone that has anything to do with this city. He has been a true leader in the city in many, many ways for many, many decades. Our committee was very pleased to bring him to this council chamber and say that we recommended him highly with our greatest respect, and that we have already set up a meeting that our committee is going to have a joint meeting between the Public Safety Committee and the Commission to talk about some issues that are coming before the council later this year in the management of the department. But we've already established a very good working relationship. It's been a good working relationship with this council for a long time, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you the designee for the continuation of his role on the Police Commission and president of that commission, Mr. John Mack. Mr. Mack, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Councilmember Smith, Council President Garcetti, and members of the council. Thank you again for considering my reappointment to the Police Commission. It's been a very important and challenging responsibility, to say the least, but one that has been very rewarding in many different ways, and I'm pleased to be before you this morning, and certainly would be willing to answer any questions that any of you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Cardenas is our next speaker.
Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you, John Mack, for all of your decades of service, not only to the city of Los Angeles, but to this country. You've been working very hard to make sure that we have equality and representation for everybody. And being on the Police Commission is an appropriate place for someone with your perspective and your wisdom to be. And I just wanted to thank you for your years of service on the Commission and congratulate you. I would hope and expect that you are going to be confirmed. But at the same time, it's not because we take things for granted, but because we do appreciate you. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. And it's wonderful to see you here and to see you continuing to commit to your service. And as usual, when you look at the amount of pay that you get, which is zero financially, but the benefit is knowing that you can look at this city and know that you're making your mark and you're making a difference, not for yourself per se, but for the entire community as a whole. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councilmember Cardenas.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas, and thank you, Mr. Mack, for your incredible leadership and certainly the largest drop in crime we have seen in my lifetime has happened under your watch. We talk a lot about accountability and civil rights and the other contributions that you have made, but that is, it shows us that we can do constitutional policing at the same time that we actually make our streets safer. In fact, the two are inextricably linked, and we thank you for being at the pinpoint of that and making the city a greater place for all Angelinos. We have one other speaker on the queue, Mr. Rosendahl, that would like to add his good wishes, and then we will take a vote.
Yeah, I could not be here without reacting and commenting to you. You're a true treasure to our great city. Your leadership historically in the civil rights movement, in basic human rights, has been phenomenal. The fact that you got into the other side, from being out there really demanding justice to becoming part of the system, it has been extraordinary, and your contributions will go on forever, because let me tell you, as you well know, the police department 20 years ago, 25 years ago, did not reflect the community, and racial profiling and all kinds of injustices were commonplace. And you're fighting that as an outside spokesperson for basic civil and human rights was heralded all over the country. And then when you came into the room, you dramatically impacted the rank and file of the LAPD. You dramatically implemented the training of young men and women coming into it. And today we have the best police force in the nation. And you've played a major role, and I know you sit on that commission as a watchdog to make sure nothing ever changes. So we are very fortunate to have you, a treasure and a pillar in our community, coming back on the board. Thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you, Councilman Rosenbaum.
Thank you very much. And as I said, it's now Tom Labange would like to speak.
Just wanted to ask you to just of the 100% of the 200% that you give the city, but maybe 5% of it, focus on traffic in some way. That's a big issue under the police department's guys in traffic enforcement. I always kid the traffic officers. I say they're going to catch a lot of activity that probably goes because of the disrespect for traffic laws, traffic safety as it relates to pedestrians, traffic safety as it relates to bicycles, and just good community coexistence, because there's a lot of people who sometimes drive a little better than a little more NASCAR-like as opposed to a little Los Angeles-like. And you would know that in years past we were the greatest bunch of drivers in the world. But just to put that in the back of your playlist, if you could. And thank you, John, for a long, Bill said it, but a long, many, many years of great service to Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. Mr. Labange, excuse me. And with that, let's go ahead and open the roll on this nomination, the renomination, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Thank you, and congratulations, Commissioner Mack. We'll next go to our general public comments. This is for items that are not on today's agenda, but nevertheless under the jurisdiction of the council. If I can ask council members to please draw your attention to the podium, and Michael Alcazar will be our first speaker. After Michael will be Ivan Curry. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Council. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Council. My name is Michael Alcazar. I am a licensed canvasser with the Department of Animal Services. I wanted to start off by saying that the licensed canvassers are the most effective way to collect dog licenses. We, the canvassers, whether it's sunny or raining, are out in the field 7 days a week generating revenue for the city. Council, we both know in these tough economic times, city residents are not eager to come to city shelters and pay for a dog license. Especially when they learn that these fees are going up starting July 1st. The statistics show that only 1% of LA City residents that have dogs register their dogs online. Without the canvassers out in the field, most of these fees will be uncollected and lost. With the right support and the right management, we can help our department keep our animal shelters open with the money generated from the revenue from canvassing. There are nonprofit animal advocacy groups that have offered to pay for credit card machines for us to use out in the field. With the credit card machines and the DWP with the credit card machines and the DWP's dog database list, we can help bring in even more revenue for the city. So why stop us now? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your service. Appreciate it. Ivan Curry is our next speaker. Is Ivan Curry here? Okay, if not, Jacob Miller. I come forward.
Good morning, Mr. President, City Council. My name is Jacob Miller. I've been an animal care technician for Department of Animal Services for going on 9 years with the City of Los Angeles. I'm here also to speak to you today about the licensed canvassers. Pretty much a little under 2 weeks shy of July 1st, our canvassers are going to be let go of. The program is going to be removed from our department and maybe put to somebody else's responsibility within the department. But let me say this, it's the most cost-effective way to gather licenses, to get an accurate census of the dogs, which have been underreported.
I'm sorry, if I could just ask you to, we'll pause your time. If I could ask everybody to please keep their conversations to a minimum so we can hear our public speakers and give them the courtesy that they deserve. Thank you.
Any employee with our department would tell you that there's easily $1 million in the city, not this 350,000 that our department heads are saying. This is a potentially large revenue stream. And this goes beyond revenue. This has a cascading effect. The more we know about the number of dogs in the city, the better we can provide services. This is the only revenue stream that we can count on with our department, and to have it just go away, it's irresponsible, it's crazy. I ask that you guys try and put a little more pressure on our department heads to try and find some way to keep this going, even if it needs to be restructured in some way to make it even more efficient. But this is definitely really the only way that we can get licenses in a cost-efficient manner and still maintain that connection with the public, so that way they remain educated, which also has a positive cascading effect on the future. I want to thank you very much, and maybe you guys should also look into possibly auditing our department, because I think a lot of these numbers are being underreported. I think a lot of the numbers that are going out as far as how much this particular end of our department costs are being overinflated as well. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your service to the people of Los Angeles. We appreciate you very much. Dr. Clyde Williams is our next speaker. After that will be John Walsh.
Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA. North Spring Street, viaduct, widening, and rehabilitation will be viewed this afternoon. Maybe they will approve it, maybe they won't approve it in the committee, and send it to you. If it's not approved, then it needs to go back and be revised. It was done on a desktop without any real environmental review of it. The FEIR is inadequate, incomplete, and provides insufficient information to support the project as they define it and the impacts assessed therefrom. So we're looking at trying to help you, help the Bureau of Engineering, and maybe even Caltrans get a reasonable project that can be done reflecting the community's needs, the cornfield of Arroyo Seco's needs, and the need to protect one of the few remaining bridges along the LA River. You're already doing the 6th Street viaduct rehabilitation, which means knock it down, rebuild it in something else. So we're quite concerned, but until you certify it through this council, we will have to wait and wait and wait, as Councilman Reyes waited for BOE to bring up the project to him. Wait until the very last minute and then put it into the council district so that they have to approve it, elsewise they lose $47 million. Is this bureaucracy? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Williams. John Walsh is our next speaker. After that is William Rodriguez Morrison. Good morning, Mr. Walsh.
Morning. John Walsh, blogging at Hollywood Highlands, HIGHLANDS. 1.5 million successful server requests since December 1st. Thanks to you folks out here. I cried myself to sleep last night. It was just terrible. And I had a tissue here for Ms. Hahn, but she's not here, so we could cry together. Steve Cooley. Steve Cooley almost lost yesterday, the Republican primary, because of a vicious right-wing hate attack by the teabaggers. Now, on our blog, we asked everybody who was declined to state to take a Republican ballot in the state of California and to vote for Steve Cooley. So yesterday, I felt for the first time what it was like to be a Republican. It was very strange. I ran out of the voting booth and I started screaming, "Mexicans, go back home, go back home!" Finally, it passed. The Republican surge passed. and now I'm back where I belong. Racist Republicans, except for Steve Cooley, our next Attorney General. Steve Cooley. Miguel Santana, he's not here right now, convicted criminal, HollywoodHighlands.org, serving probation, but you're politically correct. Now, Eric has called me a sexist with the term weak sister. Okay, I don't belong to your religion, secular humanism, but I think you are sexist by calling the Department of Aging the Department of Aging. From now on, it should be called, because that's hurtful to me. You're hurting my feelings. Call it the Department of Gracefully Aging. Change the name. I don't care how much it costs. For the first time on Hollywood Boulevard, we have the look-alike Gestapo. Maybe we should have Hitler out there as a look-alike. It might frighten some people. You are ethnically cleansing the boulevard of celebrity look-alikes. HollywoodHighlands.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Our next speaker is William Rodriguez Morrison. After that is Rick Nightingale in Van Nuys.
Thank you, council members. Actually, I came down here to congratulate some of the people that won yesterday. And I'm going to announce myself once again. I'm William Rodriguez Morrison, your nominee, your Republican nominee for the 24th Senate District. And also winning my neighborhood council seat, in which case I came down here just to inform you that I am going to be doing some indictments with my neighborhood council for overspending. It's time that we put a stop to all this foolish nonsense of overspending. And before I leave that seat, before I take my Senate seat, I am going to make sure I bring city indictments on the neighborhood councils. The next thing is, I know you have your city election coming up. I went through 79 of my precincts yesterday when I was running for state senate. Some of the election polls were not run properly, and I'm hoping when you have your city election, since I will not be running for no city election this coming year, I hope that it's run properly too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. We'll go next to Van Nuys, to one of our remote facilities where we have testimony, which is San Pedro and Van Nuys. And Rick Nightingale is our next speaker. We'll come back, and Cheryl Parisi will be next.
Yeah, Rick Nightingale. I'll tell you, you people, it seems like you people, it's about the Arizona thing again, that nobody reads what the law went. I turned on and read what you people wrote regarding, and you lied again, like normal politicians. It says that you can't do anything about illegals unless you pull them over for some other type of law-breaking thing, not just to turn around and pull them over and see if they are legal or illegal. Why can't you tell the truth? It's not that big of a thing to tell the truth, including the newspapers and so forth. Why is it the Hispanic turns around and thinks that they should turn around and take California back? They ought to face reality and figure it out that California is not going to give it back to Mexico. It just ain't going to happen. Why does everybody think that we owe them something because we took it? They took it from the Indians, and it went on and on and on in history. So what is this? There are supposed to be 4 million people in the city of Los Angeles, or the county of Los Angeles. Why is it that when you see the picketers out there and so forth, there's only maybe 100,000, but there's a lot more other people turn around and disagree with them? Like 70% agreed in Arizona of what the law passed, and that's what they wanted. Over 50% want you people to turn around and get rid of the sanctuary city and so forth. But you won't do it. The law says you're supposed to do it, but you won't do it because you are the law and you are the establishment. So why do the other people, I thought it was supposed to be majority rules, but not here. Why can't you people do your job and face up to reality? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Cheryl Parisi. She'll be followed by Victor Gordo. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Cheryl Parisi, and I'm here on behalf of the 22,000 men and women working proudly for the City of Los Angeles and members of the Coalition of City Unions. We have been part of a partnership that has done remarkable things in this city to stabilize its financial position. Our partnership has resulted in a 15% diminution in the city civilian workforce by retiring and managing the reduction of 3,500 workers. We have driven down costs our members entered into a generous agreement conceding over $100 million worth of pay raises to the City of Los Angeles to help it through its most difficult financial challenges. And yesterday afternoon, we heard from the City Administrative Officer that the workers' concessions are being rebuked. He notified us that the CAO intends to move forward with the layoff of 246 workers on July 1st. These workers are among the lowest paid direct service providers in the City of Los Angeles. Over 103 workers in the Department of Recreation and Parks, closing all of the city's licensed child care centers and significant numbers of recreation coordinators, cutting back recreation opportunities and child care opportunities for thousands of children in our city. The laying off of over 101 workers in the library department that will result, for the first time since the Great Depression of the 30s, library service being reduced to 5 days a week. And why is this being done? These workers will cost
Ask you to conclude.
$13.4 million to retain. And the consequence of this act will trigger negotiated pay raises of $54 million this year,
Thank you.
over $185 million over 3 years, and increasing the city's pension obligation needlessly by $35 million.
Thank you.
This is a precipitous act.
Victor
We ask
Gordo is
that
our
you
next
review it
speaker.
immediately. Thank you.
After Mr. Gordo will be Julie Butcher.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the City Council. Victor Gordo with the Coalition of LA City Unions and Labor's International Union of North America, Local 7777. Today you have two paths before you. You have until July 1st to pick one of those paths. One path is to continue the path of changing the way this city does business. We removed this council and Labor together 3,400 positions off of the city's payroll. 3,400 position eliminations, real structural change. We've done that together, and we are committed, should we proceed down that path, to see more structural change. We've committed to the CAO and to members of this city council and to the mayor that we will look at long-term costs to the city's pension and other areas. The second path is a path where that will see this council award significant pay raises to one set of employees while at the same time watching other sets of groups of employees walk out the door. That path not only awards pay increases but decimates city services, because the people walking out the door are the people providing direct services to the people of this city. That path also takes you down the path of litigation, because our agreement prohibits the ability of this city to unilaterally implement and impose furloughs on our membership, and we will stand by that agreement. We ask you today not to go down the path of awarding some pay raises while showing others the door. We ask you to listen to the workers of this city who are very clearly stating to you, say no to pay raises and yes to protecting city services. It's absolutely ludicrous to say that we are going to save $13 million while expending $54 million to the base, in the general fund, and in the proprietary departments. Say no to pay raises and yes to city services.
Thank you very much. Julie Butcher is our next speaker. After that is Alice Goff.
City workers have stood prepared to work with you as always, understanding the direness of the fiscal moment. Working with your CAO, city workers identified millions of dollars in structural, long-term cost savings. Now, the CAO may come and tell you that it's only worth $8 million or $80 million. The fact is that you are about to engender a $54 million raise this year by laying off 246 low-wage direct deliverers of service who will save you $13.4 million. It doesn't make sense operationally, it doesn't make sense fiscally, and it doesn't make sense morally. You can change your mind. This is not done. We still stand prepared to work with you to keep everybody working and to keep services being provided. We implore you to not slap away the hands of generosity that city workers offered in sacrifice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Butcher. Alice? Don? You want to pass? Okay. Wayne Spindler is our last speaker for general public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. We see that Janice Hahn's not here today. Just want to congratulate the voters of the state of California for just saying no to this Los Angeles City Council candidate for the lieutenant governor. And the ironic part is had the mayor of San Francisco, if he had not entered that race, she may have won that. But in any event, there's going to be a general coming up in November. So Janice Hahn, she's not here today, which I thought she's paid to be a city councilman, but I guess she's paid to continue to run for her lieutenant governor's office. I can tell you that I'm here to declare that Janice Hahn has unsuccessfully failed to become lieutenant governor. Now, at today's meeting, there's a couple of items on the agenda where she's going to be spending money in her district. All of a sudden, she can find money for her district to make various improvements. Last week, there was $450,000, and I think today another $100,000. What about the other 14 districts? What about CD1? What about getting off the 10 freeway and going north on Hoover? All the way down, you see all those vacant businesses and defaced and tagged buildings. You call for 3 years, and they never remove the tagging underneath the 10 freeway. But Janice Hahn's district, now we have money. Why? Because she may get recalled, and she may be facing that. Finally, the other loser was Rocky Delgadillo, and he was running a lot of commercials during the Laker game. I saw his face a lot, but he also lost. So thank you to the state of California.
Now we'll close general public comment. Ivan Curry, I called before. Did Mr. Curry come back? Just want to make sure. Okay. We'll close our general public comment now. I'd like to recognize Mr. Labange for
Yeah, we have a
introduction.
special introduction right here. This is the student body president from Ivanhoe Elementary School in Silver Lake. She's going to join me. Future councilwoman, Hannah Barakat.
Please welcome the 5th grade class of Ivanhoe Elementary School from the Silver Lake community.
Stand up and be recognized, Ivanhoe Dragons. Good job. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Garcetti and I. Thank you, Ivanhoe and Miss Jones. Miss Jones, who lives in the district, is the teacher. I knocked on her door when I ran for office. Her big Labrador bit me.
Mr. Labange.
But I got the vote.
Did she vote for you? She did?
She did vote
All
for
right,
me.
Good
Thank you,
judgment.
Miss Jones. Mr. DeMerge, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's so great. It is.
Congratulations. It's always great to see Ivanhoe here, and welcome to City Hall. I'd like to recognize Mr. Rosendahl for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to reconsider Council File 10-0663 and 10-0670 from yesterday, which are the transit fare increases we approved yesterday. While the ordinance was approved, we needed 12 votes yesterday, so the ordinance was held over for another week. What we'd like to do is get, the Department of Transportation is on a very tight budget and time frame that we could approve this today. Since we have 12 members today, it would help DOT if we move forward with it. I would appreciate it if we could reconsider and have a vote.
Okay. Let's go ahead and open the roll on reconsideration, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
For folks who didn't follow all that because of our rules, basically all ordinances have to have 12 or more members in a unanimous vote the first time, or else it goes to a second reading when it's just a simple majority of 8. And it would have carried over for another week. This reconsideration, which is allowed for a meeting after, will allow us with 12 members to pass it if there is a unanimous vote. With that, let's open the roll then on the vote. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That's approved. We'll send that forthwith without objection. Thank you. If we can go to next item called special, please.
Item 6 was being held on the desk for Councilmember Parks, awaiting the committee report, which has now been circulated.
All right, Mr. Parks?
We're good? We can move that, yes.
Okay. Let's go ahead then and please open the roll on number 6. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That's approved, and we will send that forthwith if there's no objection to that, too. Next item called special, please.
Item 9, called special by Councilmember Alarcon.
All right, Mr. Alarcon, we have item number 9 before us.
Council members, item number 9 is regarding the first phase of recommendations from the Business Tax Advisory Committee. And we made a commitment that instead of waiting for a full report in 18 months, that we were not going to hesitate to move forward with recommendations that made sense now. And this is the first stream of those recommendations that have been reviewed by the committee. The very first thing I want to say is we owe an incredible debt of gratitude to the BTAC committee, particularly the leadership who have attended numerous hearings, including one just yesterday, and have taken time out of their busy schedules to do this work. By offering these as we go, it even means they have to attend more committee meetings and more council meetings than the last time BTAC was put together. So we want to say thank you for their recommendations, and we anticipate and look forward to many, many more recommendations to improve the relationship between our business community and the city government, and to enhance the quality of services that we render to the business community so that they can do their work and create jobs. In this case, they have made a series of recommendations that I think are going to have a very positive effect. First of all, we are helping businesses understand their classification by placing an auditor's manual online and creating a classification upon registration program so that businesses can find out what their classification would be before moving into the city. That should avoid a lot of problems in determining their status after. We also are conforming our look-back periods to be consistent with the Franchise Tax Board and IRS. Very frustrating to businesses to have different what are called look-back periods, the period of time which can be analyzed to see whether they've been operating under the correct tax structure. Thirdly, we're allowing taxpayers to increase the time to file an appeal from 15 days to 45 days. Particularly a new business, it's hard for them to conduct their business, at the same time be worried about appeals, and in 15 days they may just file frivolous appeals because they don't have time to get into the details, and this will avoid many of those. But also in 45 days they should be able to prepare a better appeal that would make more sense. The recommendations also address the need to collect money owed to the city by businesses and fine businesses who are not registered by implementing a voluntary disclosure agreement program, an offer and compromise program, which are being implemented by the Office of Finance and are expected to generate revenue to the city. Again, this is just the first set of recommendations, and we're anticipating literally dozens and dozens of more recommendations, and all in all, we have agreement on about 80 or 90% of the terminology that they presented to us. We do have a couple of amendments that I would like to offer. The first amendment is to recommendation number 3A. For filers who filed late, there should be a 3-year look-back period counted beginning on the filing date, not the due date. I won't get into the details, but that makes a big difference to them, and I think it's important. The second amendment is to recommendation number 5, to request the city attorney prepare and present an ordinance to clarify that there is no time limit for look-back periods for filers who file fraudulent returns. This is because the tax code does not currently mention fraudulent returns, and it needs to be clarified. Again, we owe a debt of gratitude to Lloyd Greif, the chairman, and the committee as a whole for their tremendous number of hours and the quality of recommendations that they've made.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alarcon. Mr. Parks is our next speaker.
Mr. Alarcon, could we just add one friendly amendment on item 10, instruction 10, that we just add the Office of Finance to work with the city attorney on that direction, on the classification? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. And thank you as well to the members of BTAC. We gave you a quick mission, and you've turned it around quickly on the first batch, and we really appreciate the good work that you've done. There are no other speakers on the queue, so the best thing we can do for your work is to adopt it. So with that, let's go ahead and take a vote. If we can open the roll. Close the roll. Sorry? Oh, was there a presentation you wanted to? Yeah, if you want to come forward real quick, Mr. F. And the members. We're on the verge of a successful vote, so don't mess it up.
Good morning. I'm Lloyd Greif. I'm chairman of BTAC. On my left is Vice Chairman Craig Morris and Mel Cohn. On my right is Mike Banner. So we're 4 of the 9 members of the Business Tax Advisory Committee. And we'd like to thank you for your consideration of our recommendations. There are multiple ones in front of you. These are the first recommendations we recognize to come before the City Council with respect to our work so far. And we're hopeful that these will be perceived the way we perceive them, which is really as low-hanging fruit. And what we mean by that is an easy, quick way without fiscal impact for the city to send a strong signal to the business community here in Los Angeles that the city is interested and seriously interested in being business friendly, that the city is in favor of transparency, consistency, and equity in the administration of the business tax code. So with that overview comment, I'd like to address a couple of the recommendations that we do have comments on, Mr. President. Specifically, I'm going to take them in the order that the numbers are off to the left. So number 1, we're totally on board with. Number 2, we agree with the instruction to the Office of Finance and the CAO and the CLA and us, but we would request that they come back quickly, that this be accelerated. The concern that we have here is we do not want businesses to be in a situation where they really don't know what precedents are out there in terms of rulings that have been made, what guidance has been provided to other businesses. We feel that it's in everyone's interest, both the Office of Finance, the City of Los Angeles, and the taxpayers, that there be full disclosure. Obviously, full disclosure that doesn't involve any issues from an attorney-client privilege standpoint. We understand the city attorney's issues in that regard, but we feel that these guidance memorandums and what have you can be appropriately redacted so that the substance can be conveyed as to what the prior decisions were without in any way jeopardizing the city's position. I don't know if anybody else has any further comments on that. I would like to go to number 3. 3A we're fine with in terms of the 3-year statute of limitations from filing due date. 3B, we do have an issue, and I'd like to have Craig on my left to address that.
Yes, on issue 3B, we asked that, is this working? Okay. Okay, thank you. On issue 3B, we asked that the council not move forward with this. And this has to do with eliminating the look-back period for non-filers. Currently, the statute is 8 years for a look-back, and BTAC believes that removing that 8-year period would create really an undue hardship on businesses for record-keeping purposes. There are businesses that really are unaware of the filing requirement and are not scofflaws and really would be reporting if they knew of the rules and the laws. And once they're discovered, they do want to be in compliance. but removing the 8-year look-back period would cause an undue burden for them on record keeping, going back, 20 years for records, as well as, trying to estimate revenues and so forth. So we ask that council not move forward with this provision and leave the 8-year ordinance in place.
We think this would be particularly harsh on micro businesses, this very small business owner out there who obviously isn't going to have the same capability of records maintenance, but also may not have the same knowledge of the tax ordinance. So we're not talking about scofflaws at all in this regard. And 8 years is certainly a sufficiently long period of time.
And because of this reason, most states do have an administrative look-back period that is limited, and this is in line with many states.
Go ahead, please continue.
Okay, thank you. Number 4, we also would like to address that. Craig, why don't you continue?
Sure. This is a recommendation to refer back to BTAC on a statute of limitations for a substantial omission of tax in excess of 25%. And BTAC did discuss this at the meeting, so we did address this at our last BTAC meeting after the report was issued. And we recommend that council not move forward with a separate classification for a statute of limitations for substantial omission. There's a couple of reasons for this. A lot of the controversy that takes place with respect to businesses has to do with the apportionment of income within and outside the city, headquartered businesses, other businesses that are doing business within and without the city, and that's already a controversy, and all the city has to do is argue that, try and demonstrate that a city has missed the reporting of income through apportionment by 25%, and now instead of going back 3 years, which is proposed, they'll be able to go back 6 years. And it creates an additional level of controversy that really we're trying to avoid. We're trying to make this more business-friendly. And again, businesses that believe they're doing the right thing should be treated no differently than, we should be really arguing on the apportionment issue and not arguing on the statute of limitations.
Yeah, what this provision effectively does is it makes almost the 3-year statute of limitations illusory, because it becomes very easy for the Office of Finance to get around that statute of limitations by employing this provision, and we think that is not appropriate. Number 5, we are fine with. Number 6, we are fine with. Number 7, we are in concurrence as well. And number 8, we do respectfully differ with the initial inclination apparently to further discuss and review. We feel quite strongly with respect to number 8 that the issues that were raised at the Jobs Committee by the City Attorney's Office and the Office of Finance all appeared to relate to if you have an auditor who made a mistake in the past, and it was almost as if they were saying that it's a problem. You have to have the auditor be more thorough when they're conducting their audit. Frankly, we think the auditors should always be thorough when they're conducting their audit. We see no issue with an auditor being thorough in conducting the audit. But once an audit is done, a business should have an opportunity, should be able to rely on that auditor's decision, and it shouldn't be something that can then be changed by a subsequent auditor's decision. So if the concern is about, slipshod auditing practices, I think that can be dealt with other ways than trying to deal with it this way. So we don't want, the issue there is a catch-22 issue, where we don't want the business to be in a situation where they rely on a previous auditor's findings, just as they rely on a previous Board of Review's findings, only to find that those are subsequently overturned, even though there's been no change in the business facts, circumstances, the nature of what they do. Number 9.
Number 9 is the adoption of a voluntary disclosure agreement program, and we thank the city and council for or Jobs Committee for agreeing to adopt a voluntary disclosure agreement. I think the The only issue outstanding has to do with the look-back period, and BTAC is recommending a 4-year look-back period. We have provided the Office of Finance with a list of look-back periods for the various states, and what that list shows is that most states adopt either a 3 or a 4-year look-back period for businesses that voluntarily disclose. The longer the period out, the less a business is going to be likely to disclose. So we ask that a 4-year look-back period is considered for the voluntary disclosure agreement period.
Number 10 and 11 were totally in concurrence. Number 12 was further indicates a reference back to BTAC that's related to an adjustment in the interest rate for refunds to bring it closer to the interest rate for assessments. It has been further considered by BTAC, and we drop our recommendation number 12. So we believe no further action need be taken by the City Council or the Jobs Committee. This one is off the table from BTAC's perspective. And the final one is instruction to the Office of Finance and the City Attorney's Office for number 13. We believe we're okay with that one in terms of the offer and compromise program being further fleshed out, so we're supporting that as well.
Okay, great. Mr. Labange is our next speaker.
Just a couple of questions, just from a very basic question on taxation of businesses. If you go out to Wilshire Boulevard and you walk down Wilshire Boulevard, is every person supposed to have a business license?
Yes.
What does a business license cost?
Well, the business license is based on the gross receipts of the business.
Okay, so if it's under a certain number, they don't pay anything?
That's correct.
Should there be a basic, like $25, $100 fee to do business in our city to help administer what we do? And I'm just saying that because there's a lot of people who do not have a business license, who do not participate because they're in a challenge. And I'm just saying, if everybody pays $25, no matter what it is, that gives you a little seal that says City of Los Angeles, Office of Finance. This is, because I remember when Councilmember Gruhl was here, now Controller, she wanted to wipe all that out. And I think that's good to say that, but then you lose control of the base of who's out there. And I remember in my earlier days just how aggressive parking enforcement officers were hitting the meters. You would see tax collectors from the city's tax collection agency walk the boulevard instead of going to the meter and issue a ticket if it was over time. They would go into the shop to make sure they had their little tax license hanging.
Councilmember Labange, all businesses, regardless of size, are to file. What you're referring to is the small business exemption. They would still have to file in order to do that, so the Office of Finance would be able to track them, and as they grow.
I got it, but could you honestly say to me that everybody on Wilshire Boulevard, Hollywood Boulevard, Ventura Boulevard is in our system?
Of course not.
Okay, so I'm just saying, if you have a simple request to say for $25 and you do it online, it registers you. I just think it may make sense to get this done. Not today, not in this action, but I would think it would be, because there's a diversity of business throughout, and some are big business, but some are need to get into the program. Another challenge that I have, members, is the...
Well, let's stay with that one. We'll be happy to consider that one.
I got that, but I have another challenge. Could I issue another challenge?
No, you can't. I just wanted to indicate that before we leave that one, we will consider that one.
Yeah, okay, good. The issue of the commerce now out of our catering trucks. Some parts of the city, there's 11 in a row on Wilshire Boulevard. It does have an impact to the businesses. And how does that work? So I want to work with you because those are small, entrepreneurial, and a lot of people like them, but there's a significant impact on the business that exists in a boulevard.
I think the location of catering trucks would be out of our purview.
No, but it's business, and you're about business, so I'm going to look to you at business just to help out, because it's not just the catering trucks. It's, let's say, if I want to sell jackets or T-shirts, and I get a truck, and I pull into a parking meter, and I sit there, and I feed the meter, and I conduct business. I think there's an interest here that as we transform, we have to look at that. I thank you for your dedication as business people to help Los Angeles focus better. And we all should be friendly in government service. We should be business attuned to helping people make commerce successful. Thank you very much.
Thank Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Garcia. Garcetti.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smythe. Thank you, Councilmember Glenn Smythe. I wanted to just rise on a couple of these items. I think most of the suggestions you are do it faster, so I appreciate that. I think moving it, that's on us as much as your voices, so we will shepherd that and continue to be that voice as well. I wanted to ask actually the committee members, I know Mr. Krikourian maybe can answer on the, but I'd be curious to hear from the BTAC folks as well. Excuse me, on item 3, I heard what you said, and the difference, I mean, for non-filers who voluntarily disclose, I totally would get that point. You know, once it's been brought to attention, will you work with us, can we work with you? That's a business-friendly thing to do, and I think we would be able to do that. For folks that don't voluntarily disclose, walk me through the scenario of, I mean, I think as Mr. Krikourian said, that's kind of classic scofflaw in his opinion, but what, you know, I get a lot of calls from small businesses that are sucked into the city business tax and didn't know for a long period of time. So when I'm thinking this through, is it those ones who don't have it so they can't voluntarily disclose, or is it people who are still, when alerted, won't voluntarily disclose that you think there should not be, that there should be a time limit on?
No, these are businesses that have not been contacted, that really are unaware.
So that's what we're calling voluntary disclosure, whether or not they...
Yes.
So they have not yet been contacted.
That's correct. Once you've been contacted, you should not be allowed in the voluntary disclosure.
If it's that, I mean, and because I would have agreed with you, Mr. Krikourian, I get a lot of calls on this. I think we all got, especially those of us who were around 4 or 5 years ago, when the city, we asked them to crack down on scofflaws. I think we did a very good job. In fact, that's how we were able to reduce business tax for all the businesses that we're paying. But of course, when we do one good effort this way, there are all these very small businesses that say, whoa, wait a second, I'm one person who does this. They did have this responsibility, don't get me wrong, but it was a big bureaucracy against the individuals who kind of were just one-off incorporators, and they said, what do we do? You know, these aren't people who necessarily always have 20 years of their business records, etc. Can we set up a mechanism? Can this be, as we send this forward, excuse me, can we set up something where there would be a mechanism for once the contact is made, there then be some sort of change in this? Because this is for people who have not yet been contacted. So I agree, I think, with what the committee was saying, if these are folks who haven't done it. But once the contact occurs, it's whether there's compliance or not. I think that's what we're really looking at. If there's somebody who's been contacted and said, look, you should have been paying this tax for a certain period of time, we need you now to share your records. If there are folks who are unwilling to do that, which is what I thought what the involuntary was about, obviously we'd, you know, and that's how you explained it to me, then we would go after them. But if it's just simply somebody who, this might need a little bit more study to kind of figure that out. I would hate for us with the kind of, the people who have 1 or 2 businesses, and the Department of Finance maybe can come forward and help us out on this as well. But I was told that, you know, many local and state municipalities do have a cutoff date. The state of California does not, is my understanding. The Franchise Tax Board does not have a cutoff for this.
For voluntary disclosure, yeah. They do. Yes. For you're talking about
the table, if you will.
I'm sorry. Because I do want to contrast that with companies that have been notified for the first time that were unaware of the filing, because that is 3B, and that's the one where I think the proposal is to move the current look-back period to unlimited. And where I see that is you'll have businesses that receive 1099s, independent contractors out there, and because of the sharing agreement now, the city finds out through the state when they file the tax returns, and a lot of these businesses and a lot of these individuals are unaware of their filing requirement, and that's why we would like to keep a limited look-back period for companies that are businesses that have not filed, even though they've been notified.
So is there a motivation there just because of the financial impact of somebody having to pay that many years of taxes, or is there an ethical point here?
It's the financial impact. It's also the fact that companies or businesses may not have records going back past 8 years. You know, if you're going to go back, 20 years, for example, most businesses don't keep their records going back that far.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. If you'd like to push your button again, you may. Mr. Krikourian.
don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, well, I think we want to put this into a little bit of a context. When we place a limitation on the look-back period, we are making an affirmative policy decision to shelter businesses from their liability for a certain period of time. And there are many times there are good policy justifications for that. Businesses that are trying to comply, they don't maintain their records forever and so on. In this case, we want to incentivize voluntary disclosures to come forward of people who have been in violation of the law. We want to incentivize them to voluntarily come forward. And so it makes sense to provide some limitation in the case of voluntary disclosures. It makes no sense to me to provide any shelter to an illegal business, whether they've been contacted or not, because it is the business's obligation to pay their taxes. It is the business's obligation to register and comply with the city's law. And it shouldn't be up to the city to go and ferret out all of the illegal businesses and notify them before we are able to go back and get the tax obligations that the city is owed. What essentially happens now is these illegal businesses are competing unfairly with every small business that's complying with the law, every business that's trying to do their best to make a go of it in this difficult economy while still paying their taxes and doing all the right things. So I see no policy incentive whatever to providing a protection to illegal businesses in the same way that the IRS does not and the Franchise Tax Board does not. Now, in the case of the types of businesses that you're talking about, maybe unaware of their obligations, whatever, there's always the ability of the city to exercise prosecutorial discretion in limiting what they end up going after. But for us as policymakers to say that we are going to handcuff our regulatory agencies, handcuff our tax collection process, handcuff law enforcement from going after illegally operated businesses after a certain amount of time makes no sense to me. Let's leave it as a matter of prosecutorial discretion, as a matter of just a negotiation with the business between the city and the business about how many numbers of years they should pay their back taxes. But for us to predetermine ahead of time to do that, it essentially encourages businesses to stay underground, to avoid being contacted by the city, and to continue to operate illegally and compete unfairly with businesses that are trying to do the right thing.
If I may speak, I would respectfully disagree with the council member. 8 years is a pretty heavy penalty for most businesses, and the concern that I have is the reason BTAC was formed was, I thought, to send a message to the city of Los Angeles that there's a new sheriff in town in terms of trying to make the city more business friendly. So now all of a sudden what comes out of BTAC directly or indirectly is a result that goes in the opposite direction. You already have an ordinance here in the city that is 8 years for non-filers, and now you're talking about making it unlimited. There's no way you can make that look like you're being nice to business, and I think there's already a lot of concern about whether businesses are being treated fairly and consistently and equitably and transparently in this city. And you start making this kind of a change, you're sending the wrong signal. Why go out of your way to send the wrong signal? You already have an 8-year statute. That is plenty onerous enough. That is a big check for somebody to write if it turns out that they are. Even if, and ignorance isn't an excuse from the law, but how much do you want to penalize an ignorant taxpayer? You already have a provision in here that has unlimited, and we're in agreement with it. BTAC is in agreement with it. You have an unlimited statute of limitations for businesses that engage in fraud. We totally agree with that. It's very clearly a bad act being performed by the business. But if they didn't file, and they perhaps didn't know that they were supposed to file, I'm not sure that's a bad act so much as that's a lack of knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Kikorian. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we discussed this at length in the Jobs Committee, and I think Mr. Kikorian hit it right on the head, is that there's a very difficult ability to separate a company that chooses not to pay their business tax and fraud. So if we have unlimited for fraud, why is it such a big leap to say if you didn't file taxes that we just believe that was just a instance in which you forgot or didn't know or it was ignorance? part of the fraud could be that you just don't file your income tax or your taxes. The other thing I think we have to look at, if the federal government and the franchise tax board has an unlimited time period, if they should capture one of these businesses and then put sanctions on them, why would the city not be able to then take the full breadth of that sanction and recover the money due it? Why would we say if the federal government and franchise hit somebody for a 10 or 15-year period, that the city should limit their liability to 8? These are the kinds of things I think that we certainly want to be friendly to businesses, but on the other hand, I don't think the mission of BTAC was to say get rid of business tax. We only have $400 million that we recover that we're looking to each year to spend, and we could have a situation where business tax goes away, many of the things that are in our budget would not be forthcoming. And so I think that we discussed it at length. The issues that we certainly supported was the fact that fraud was clearly an issue that everybody agreed on, but I don't know how you separate fraud from people that then say, I just didn't know. And the other thing I think that's also important as a policy that you lay out the larger issue, and then we always have found, and Antoinette can verify this, we always have found settlements as part of these issues in which in most instances right off the top the penalty is eliminated. You get the principal and the interest, but the penalty is eliminated. So we do those settlements all the time. And so I would support the items that are in the committee report, and for those items that are recommended that we go back, that we continue to discuss, so we can vet them more fully by the time they come back to council. But again, I don't think you could incentivize any business for failure to follow the rules. And as Mr. Krikorian said, I don't think it's the city's job or Antoinette's job is to go out and search people down, and then once you find them, say, let me give you a break.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Mr. Alarcon. Mr. Alarcon.
The look-back period for voluntary disclosure is what?
Councilmember Antoinette Criswell, Office of Finance. We have not determined how many years we will be proposing to the council for consideration.
So currently it is what?
The look-back period for, I'm sorry?
Voluntary disclosure.
We don't have a voluntary disclosure program in place.
So we are trying to implement a voluntary disclosure period.
That's a different program. In this particular case,
I'm not talking about that. I'm just asking about voluntary disclosure. Do we have a voluntary disclosure plan? If we don't, so
we do not have voluntary.
But what we are proposing is a look-back period for voluntary disclosure that is finite, so that we encourage people to voluntarily disclose and come forward.
That is correct, Councilmember.
Without us having to beat the bushes trying to find businesses.
Right, that is correct, and that's one of the items that your council will be approving today. It is item, let's see here, look back. The VDA. It's item number 9. Item number 9, and it's referred back to your committee, and what you requested the Office of Finance to do is to come back with a recommendation in terms of the number of years that the city...
What's the federal look-back period for voluntary disclosure?
The Internal Revenue Service, or maybe it's the Franchise Tax Board, is, I think it's, what is it?
Federal's unlimited. FTV is
Okay, the IRS is unlimited in terms of the VDA. The Franchise Tax Board is 6 years.
Okay. Council members, what we are trying to accomplish here is a sense of consistency. In fact, one of the recommendations, many times when the BTAC has approached us in committee, they've said it needs to be consistent with the federal standards, the state standards, or otherwise. In the disclosure for businesses that have not come forward voluntarily, the federal government and state governments are unlimited in terms of their look-back period. In other words, if you owe taxes, you owe taxes. It's like you go into the IRS and they say, well, your accountant may have screwed up your tax claim, but you still owe the taxes, so you got to pay. It's that simple. But what we are trying to establish is a voluntary disclosure program where we set a finite period of time, and in this case, the Franchise Tax Board has a 6-year period. The federal government has an unlimited period. But we want to encourage businesses to come into the fold and operate legally. So both of these policies have to be considered at the same time. What the worst case scenario would be if you had the same you defined a finite period for both that was equivalent. There would be absolutely no enticement for businesses to voluntarily disclose. So the worst case scenario is we do not want to have a defined period for voluntary disclosure that is equivalent or less than the period for involuntary disclosure. My intention is to come back with a voluntary disclosure period that is 6 years, maybe in 4. And we haven't fully discussed it in committee, but that matter is going back to committee with that in mind. With regard to the unlimited disclosure, Mr. Krikorian has been most articulate in saying, why should we allow businesses to operate illegally? I would be open to allowing the regulators, in this case the Office of Finance and the City Attorney, to have some discretion there. But I think we have to have a minimum period that is greater than whatever we set the period for the voluntary disclosure. So they could use their discretion, for example, if they determined that the business really did know. I'll give you an example. One of my staff members received a 1099 form because they worked for 2 hours in some campaign or something, and they didn't know they were operating as a business, and in fact they weren't. But many people do enter into the realm of operating a business and don't know it. And so I can recognize that, but I'm uncomfortable with setting across the board 8-year limit, which is what we have now, when we know that there are businesses that are absolutely doing it on purpose, and they are competing against businesses who are doing the right thing. That's the thing that troubles me with this discussion. We need to segregate our conversation about businesses that are operating legally and who are constantly challenging us to create a system of fair competition, and those businesses that are operating illegally that we want to bring into the fold, but we can't create unfair rules that encourage them to operate unfairly. That doesn't make any sense when businesses at the same time telling us we want a level playing field, and now they come and say, well, we want a level playing field, but we also want to include those that are operating illegally. That doesn't make sense. So on this one, I would strongly encourage that we maybe send both matters back to committee, and we'll resolve it there. And we shouldn't do both of these items at different times. We should do them at the same time. And I apologize that we didn't send a recommendation for the voluntary disclosure program. So if we can send item 3B back to committee along with item 9. And we'll come back with specific timeframes for both of those. That would be my motion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Alarcon. Mr. Cardenas.
Big T. I just want to make sure that we put into perspective a little bit of recent history when it comes to the city of Los Angeles and the generic term being more business friendly. I was just reminded by a city staff person that I'm one of the few people that are on the council that actually owned a business, operated a business, and paid the county fees and the city fees and the state fees and all the federal fees and all those kinds of things. And then when I got home, I had to do my own tax returns and then start doing my taxes there as well. But the one thing that I want to, that it urged me to push my button is the business friendly, the business friendly, the business friendly, the business friendly statement. Wasn't it just a few years ago that the city of Los Angeles actually made a real step in the right direction of being more business friendly than we were before? And if you remember that, I would like you to remind us how much in city revenue, annual city revenue, that impacted the city annually from that business-friendly step.
City revenues from business tax actually went up, council member.
Okay, but, okay, I'm sorry, let me say it differently. You're falling right into what I'm trying to say. How much was the estimate of the different structure that businesses would save annually?
This is Mel Cohn, VTAC member, and part of your history of 5 years ago. In the year 2000, Los Angeles business tax revenues were approximately $300 million. 2 years ago, and Office of Finance can correct me, they were approximately $450 million. So with tax reform during your period, which cost $92 million for the Office of Finance, we basically have had a swing in revenue of $250 million between the increase and what you saved. Now, I think the other point that's just as important is the impetus why this came to our attention at our current VTAC. When reviewing, quote, business-friendly, we did our due diligence with the tax professionals in the city and basically asked them, what keeps a lot of your clients from, one, not coming to the city, and two, are they reporting? And the answer came back that we need a mechanism where they can come forward.
Okay, hold on a second. You're speaking to other issues and you're not speaking to my question. Somewhere in your answer you actually gave the number I was looking for. You said 92 million.
In the year 2000, taxes were approximately $300 million city business tax revenue. In 2008, again, please correct me, Antoinette, they were approximately $450 million. So we had an increase through tax reform, which included compliance, reduction of rates, and so forth. So we had roughly $150 million.
Okay, all right. Now, I really appreciate your volunteerism, and I really appreciate your efforts, and I really appreciate you explaining to us how we still have issues we need to cover, and that's what they're trying to do, and I hope you appreciate that. But my point is this thing about being more business-friendly, the problem is it's a moving target, it's esoteric, and it really doesn't have a number to it. But however, we did in fact do something very tangible where we restructured a big part of our business filings. We reduced it to where if you're in a business and your gross receipts are less than $100,000 a year, you're not having to pay fees, etc. There were a lot of things that we did, and my point is, it reminds me again that this is the kind of issue that the appetite is so insatiable from the business community to just say business friendly, business friendly, business friendly, that you really aren't recognizing the fact that we have more efforts recently with this particular council makeup than ever in the history of Los Angeles that I'm aware of, that we have actually corrected things, helped business out, made it more business friendly, but at the same time, even in this discussion, Mel, you failed to actually acknowledge the fact that we made a big giant step just a few years ago. And when you mentioned $92 million, that was the number I was looking for. But again, it was lost in your answer because you touched on it, but you decided to speak about everything else and all the problems and issues that we still have. And it's really sad because this business-friendly mantra really doesn't help your cause when you're not willing to recognize when we actually do things right and we do go in the right direction.
Councilmember, if I could respectfully respond. Lloyd Greif again. And I was not on BTAC 1 as Mel was and Mike Banner on my right were, so this is BTAC 2. Yes, you're correct. The business tax rates were brought down as a result of the recommendations in council action. I think they were brought down about 15%. What we're dealing with is the fact that there are 88 cities in this county of Los Angeles. Los Angeles, even with that reduction, still has by far the highest business tax rate of any of the other 87 cities. Los Angeles has by far the highest business tax rate of any comparable major metropolitan city in the U.S., and on average we're about 50 times higher than the average for the rest of the county.
Mr. President, thank you for admonishing the city of Los Angeles once again, and that kind of attitude is probably not going to get the kind of cooperation you want from policymakers. Why don't you focus on the good and the bad rather than just reminding us that we do have an appetite for business taxes in this city, but you know what? We're not going to change it overnight, and it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of cooperation from you and all of us. So there you go again, just pointing out all of the things that business is mounted with, and guess what? I said at the beginning of my statement, I owned a business in this city as well, and I have family members who own business as well.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Cardenas, for what you said. First of all, I didn't even know we had this committee. I've been on the council for 4 years now. My friend Dick Reardon always said we have to become more business-friendly as a city. So here you are and you exist. And I'm looking at your recommendations, and I'm very happy. Is there somebody who can make a summary of where we are right now, as Mr. Cardenas is saying, business-friendly, and what we need to do? I'm one of those policymakers that you can't offend. I'm from the business, private sector. I joined this government when I was 60 years old, not a career politician, okay? And I know about making a balanced budget and making things work and being business-friendly. So please, give me a synopsis for the people out there as well as me, what you've accomplished and what we need to do as policymakers going forward.
Certainly, Councilmember Rosendahl. So our first effort, we're working on multiple tax.
Right.
We have split into 3 subcommittees. What you have are the recommendations from one of those subcommittees right now, which is dealing strictly with a taxpayer bill of rights.
Right.
And trying to make the administrative process more transparent, more consistent, and fairer for the taxpayer. There is also a subcommittee dealing with rates and apportionment. And there's a subcommittee dealing with incentives and exemptions. The recommendations from those other 2 subcommittees are now before the Jobs Committee to commission an RFP, because those, unlike the proposals that we have in front of you today, which are strictly non-financial, we think have virtually no fiscal impact, the ones that are looking to go to RFP do have a fiscal impact, both positive and negative in terms of the city. The view is to try and increase businesses staying, increase businesses locating here to begin with, coming here to begin with, to try and make Los Angeles a far more competitive environment to do business. And that will, in addition to increasing business taxes themselves, should also increase things like sales tax, property tax, utility tax, fees and license. I mean, we recognize the city is in an economic crisis. We're trying to help the city.
Sure.
We're not trying to, we recognize that the city has a black eye.
Hey, let me be anecdotal with you real quick, because I know we're on a time clock. One is we have an enterprise zone now at the airport. Thanks to Austin Butner standing there and our mayor and our governor helping us, we're going to create a zone there, and we're going to be more receptive and responsive. I have the 11th district as my responsibility as the elected. I have a town called Santa Monica. It's in the heart of my district of 87,000 people. 200,000 cars come through my district every morning to go to work there. Why? Because they became business friendly in the 80s and the 90s. Then they got a little piece of Culver City that the city of Venice in the early 20s gave them, Washington Boulevard and Washington Place, and they have a Costco right at the edge of Venice. So the little towns have picked off the big town. We're like the lumbering elephant, and the little ones know how to flip on a dime and make it happen. Very simple. Look at what they did in Santa Monica, Culver City, Beverly Hills, West Hollywood. The simpleness they have done to attract business there. We need to do exactly the same thing in our great city. And so I hope those other subcommittees just take a page. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. They've already done it, of how we can become more business friendly. And I will support any effort that is more business friendly and gives real competition to Santa Monica and Culver City and Beverly Hills and West Hollywood. I love those towns, don't get me wrong, but 2 of them in my district, and I know the impact I get, and Paul Koretz has them in his district too. He used to be in West Hollywood. He knows how a little town can take over. They put right on the edge of La Brea and Santa Monica Boulevard a huge complex. Of course, we LA people go and shop in there like we do at Costco off of Culver City, but they get all the revenue. We get all the abuse of the traffic and everything else. They get all the sales. Good for them. They're smart. We need to be that kind of focused. Sir, please.
Okay. And thank you, Mr. Rosal. That concludes you. If you push your button, if you want to
Maybe
speak
you can
again.
just speak.
Michael Banner, and I actually reside in your district and have for the last 35 years. I think the notion of business-friendly, maybe that's getting overworked and it's a pejorative term.
Right.
But I do think the notion that competition is really what we're really talking about. How does the city of Los Angeles create an environment where it can compete against the other 87 cities where the playing field is considered to be level? And as a prior member of the first BTAC, taxes are a very complicated issue. Comparing federal and state taxes to local city taxes and a gross receipts tax are not apples and apples, so it's a very difficult thing to try and reconcile. But I do believe, and based on my experience of working with small businesses, that there is an image or a brand issue that also needs to be worked on here, where you don't want the fact that the city is considered unfriendly coming up all the time. You like to think we want to hear about how the city competes for business.
Yes. Thank you very much. Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't, Mr. President, excuse me, I don't mean to belabor this, because I think we are going to be moving towards moving this discussion into committee, and I look forward to that. But I do want to just say, first of all, Mr. Greif said earlier that the members of BTAC have worked very hard in this effort to try to respond to our call to make Los Angeles more business-friendly, if I can keep using that hackneyed term now. But I think that that's exactly right, and I do appreciate very much all the work that everyone has put in achieving that goal. But I do, because Mr. Greif made the comment about you can't say that it's business-friendly to have this open-ended look-back for these illegal businesses. I just really beg to differ, and here's the reason. There are businesses throughout my district owned by people who work hard and play by the rules every single day. And when we ask them to do things, they do it. When we impose burdens on them, they do it. And they try to compete in the city in a way that's in compliance with the law. And the most business unfriendly thing this city can do is undercut those businesses' ability to compete by allowing illegal businesses to continue to operate in this city. And I see absolutely no reason that we can justify as a city making the people who are working hard and play by the rules suffer competitively because we allow an environment that encourages illegal businesses and an underground economy that results in lower tax revenues, that results in unfair competition with legitimate businesses, that generally includes underpayment of wages and non-compliance in other areas as well. So I think that the most business unfriendly thing we can do is allow an uneven playing field of competition. By all means, let's do what we can to continue to try to encourage people to come forward, do the right things, but let's not give an open ticket to scofflaw businesses to continue forever to operate with impunity because we don't have the ability to go back and enforce the laws that are already in place.
We are talking about having the ability to go back. The VDA that we proposed was 4 years. You'd have a 100% penalty for somebody who doesn't file, which is 8 years. And my point on business-friendly versus unfriendly is right now you have an 8-year ordinance. So if you actually take action to change that, to make it open-ended, it's going to be hard for somebody to perceive that as being not effectively at least attacking. You mentioned scofflaws. We're not trying to protect scofflaws, Councilmember. We're talking about businesses that, for whatever reason, aren't aware that there is a business tax out there. They're not filing because they're committing fraud by trying to avoid paying the tax and taking, malice of forethought kind of action.
And believe me, sir, I understand your point entirely. I don't agree with your conclusion. I think that there are businesses here that, have a competitor right next door to them that's not doing the same thing that they're doing. They're not paying their taxes. They're not, and I think that it's very simple. It's a very simple case for us to make to the business community that yes, if we're going to work harder to make sure that everybody plays by the rules, that's good for business. And I think the business people in my district, and I think throughout Los Angeles, would agree that it's not business unfriendly to go after crooks, people who aren't in compliance with the law.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. Mr. Garcia for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Smythe. I wanted to, I think most of my points have been made. Of course, what Winston Churchill said, everything that needs to be said has been said. It hasn't been said by everybody, so I'm speaking for a second time. There is a very good story to tell here. Mel, you were a big part of it. Whether you said it, whether you led with it as much as Mr. Cardenas would have liked or not, I think we all have a very good story to tell about Los Angeles, which is that we're on the right path, which is why BTAC is reconstituted again, which is why we've done things before. $92 million back in the pocket of businesses to hire people and to keep those businesses going is great. The elimination for 60% of our smallest businesses, no business tax at all, which is precisely a lot of the people that we're talking about here today, was very important as well. Michael Bloomberg talks about New York City. He says New York's never going to be the cheapest, but we have to be as cheap as we can be. We have other advantages. Santa Monica does have a very sizable business tax, actually. Santa Monica has been able to do business, and they've got a whole other set of costs that we don't have in the city of Los Angeles. We never talk about our power rates, but for businesses, our power rates have always been much more competitive than our neighboring cities right around us, those 87 cities that are there. So there's a whole bunch of things then. I think it is how we tell the story, both of reform and also of our business friendliness. We need to be able to tell a story of consistency and what we have to offer here. I agree with Mr. Corian's point. I would have respectfully disagreed. I think business friendly is both lowering our business taxes and being consistent. And that's when I'm glad this is going back to committee, because for me, what I'd like the Office of Finance City Attorney to recommend to us as well is you had 8 years, so is that a good amount? Should we keep that at 8 years? Is there a reason to go to unlimited, to think through why that is, and if there are any legal considerations? To me, as I understand things, when we're coming up with the other thing that's in 9, where there's voluntary disclosure, I hear the point of BTAC 100%. Where there's not voluntary disclosure, though, I hear Mr. Corian's point, and I think I agree with it as well, which is if you have folks who are not even volunteering to disclose, that prosecutorial discretion is where the rub is. And I know BTAC is worried because we haven't used the most discretion because we've given our Office of Finance, which has done a very good job, we've said, go get the money. And so they've done it in a very strict way. We all, as the representatives of the people, are the one who then suffer. We're the ones who come and hear from a business, and if we don't have the tools to use that discretion, we say this is not a crook, this is this sort of scenario, we need to design this, and I'd ask the committee to bring something back that has that so we can all, because we know we do constituent services for a living, we dig deep into particular cases. When we're digging deep, we get a good sense of who's really trying to, be unfair and mess the city over, and who is looking for something. And I think when we communicate that humanizing of this process, that's a lot of what I know BTAC has talked about, and that I'm confident we can get to. So, again, let's not hold hard to ideology. Let's look at actually systems implementation, and we're committed to work that on you. If we harden our positions, though, I think the systems also suffer too. So let's tell the good story. Let's get a good recommendation back, and I think we're all on the same page for the process moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcetti. Mr. LaBonge.
Thank you, and I appreciate everyone's comment. This has been good and robust, as Mr. Rosendahl says. I will challenge you, though, Mr. Rosendahl. I think Culver City, Santa Monica, West Hollywood may have a little more time in this sense to run out and hug people, and that's what we should try to do, to be friendly. I know you would love to hug people and tell them, come to business in L.A., but there's a little challenge with that. It all works out in the end, and I think Mr. Garcetti made a great point about whether it's Edison or another company, our power rates are significantly lower. It does have a difference on this. I did circulate 9A, which asked for a report back from the Office of Finance on that there be a standard fee to say that you are in business, whatever your business in, we'll get a report back. Thank you, Mr. President. It's going to committee.
Thank you, Mr. LaBonge. That concludes the speaker queue. City Attorney is opined that because there are changes to the committee report, we need to reopen the public hearing. And so we have 3 speaker cards. First will be Maya from VICA. 1 minute.
Thank you. Maya Zettler here on behalf of VICA. And I'm sorry. Pardon me. We are here today to support the hard work and diligent work of the BTAC committee and the subcommittee that put together these recommendations. We want to make sure that these recommendations move forward as swiftly and quickly as possible. This is a very important first step, but it's just a first step, and we have many other recommendations that we want BTAC to consider. So we want to move forward on these recommendations as swiftly as possible. We want to make sure that these committees, that the committee, the Jobs Committee, is aware that these recommendations would be in the best interest of the city and would make Los Angeles more competitive. The present system, as you've heard, is complicated, is perceived by the community to be inequitable, and has been an obstacle to attracting and retaining businesses here in the city. We want to make sure that we build on the success of the first BTAC, that we move forward with these immediate first steps, and that we continue to look at other recommendations down the line. Thank you.
Thank you. Beverly Kenworthy.
Beverly Kenworthy, representing the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. You'll have a letter on your desk from the Chamber regarding the recommendation for certainty in business tax liability. We want to express our strong support for the Business Tax Advisory Committee's recommendation to prohibit auditors within the Office of Finance to reverse a previous auditor's findings if all material facts and circumstances remain unchanged. We believe that ensuring this certainty moving forward is absolutely essential to successful business tax reform and improving LA's business climate. We believe that any business tax reform is incomplete without addressing this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last speaker will be David Flax.
Hi, I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. I'm here today to express our support for the 10 recommendations put forth by the Business Tax Advisory Committee. First and foremost, our city desperately needs to create jobs. For the last 3 decades, the city of Los Angeles has markedly underperformed in terms of creating jobs for its 4 million residents. While the city added approximately 1 million new residents from 1980 to 2009, not a single net new job was created for those 1 million new residents. There are many reasons for the city's stunted job growth, but one of the chief causes is the real and/or perceived business unfriendly environment that currently exists in our great city. Remember, businesses are the creators of private sector jobs. The recommendations put forth by the Business Tax Advisory Committee are reasonable, sensible proposals that will go a long way to perpetuating a more business-friendly environment here in Los Angeles. By bringing the city's tax policies in line with state and federal tax policies, and by bringing consistency, fairness, and transparency in the city's business tax code, the recommendations will help create a tax structure and process that is more hospitable to businesses. We support these overwhelmingly.
Thank you very much. That concludes the public hearing. Mr. Labange has an introduction.
I sure do. This is a great time to introduce some great students from Narbonne. The Gauchos are here in formation from Janice Hahn's district. And they're special guests here of our local Chamber of Commerce. They learned a very, I used it again, a very dynamic conversation about taxation, which is so important. They're part of the Harbor City Gateway Chamber of Commerce Executive Board team, and leadership students are right there. And it's really wonderful to see you here, because you're going to be back here. You're going to make a difference in Los Angeles in whatever profession you choose. So on behalf of Janice Hahn, I want to certainly salute you. Melissa Miller, your advisor. Give Melissa a big hand right there. And everybody else is here today. We want to thank you for coming. Let's go Gauchos!
Thank you very much and welcome. Great to have you here. There was no objection to the amendments put forward. If there are none, those will be accepted as friendly. And with that, let's take the package and please take a vote on it. Open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Again, thank you everybody on the committee as well as the council committee working on that, and we will resolve those last 2 issues in committee. Thank you for your hard work, and we look forward to our next set of suggestions and to getting a report back from the Jobs Committee. Thank you all. That is approved. Sorry, if we can go into the special meeting.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Hahn, Weezer, Koretz, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Bay, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Wesson-Zine, Garcetti, 12 members present and a quorum. This is a one-item agenda, and it is an item for which public hearing has not been held.
All righty. We have a card on item 35. Let's take that first. John Walsh. We have 2 cards. And then Wayne Spindler.
It's John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org, twin blogging. Make sure you look at the other blog, too. This is an issue concerning restaurants at the airport. Now, what they plan to do is to gentrify the restaurants at the airport. So, instead of being able to get a $3.50 cup of coffee at the airport, and the prices at the airport are outrageous, I don't know how the terrorists can afford to drink coffee or to do anything at the airport. We can't. It's so expensive. They want to gentrify it so it's all Beverly Hills types restaurants at the airport. You are what's known as a captive audience. Captive when you go to a restaurant at an airport. The food is terrible. The prices are outrageous. Up until about 20 years ago, they were all pay toilets at the restaurant. So one way or the other, it cost you with the coffee. What we want you to do is, and now you want to trickle down, no pun intended, trickle down money, airport money. We're telling you right now, and it's the same thing here. This is the only government building in Los Angeles and perhaps in California that no longer has a cafe. You cannot, because you threw out, last week, you threw out the cafe here in the building. Don't come down here anymore if you have a caffeine habit, because you will not be able to satisfy it unless Mr. LaBonge invites you into the back room where there's all the coffee you can drink. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Wayne Spindler is our next speaker. Morning again.
It's curious why this has to be, I believe they said a closed session. I don't know why that would have to be, but anyway, one of the things we have in the airport is that we have a lot of agencies that intermix amongst themselves, including the recent improvements which were just opened in the Broadley terminal, and supposedly $110 million of those recent improvements are going to have to be taken down because there's going to be changes involving the airport of several $billion involving these changes at the airport. But most of the people that travel through the city that go to other cities, they claim that LAX is one of the worst airports in the country. And then we have these hotel service charges, and of course that involves hotel taxes. I'd say that what we should do is to bring the hotel charges down. Why don't we for 2 years try a trial program and eliminate the hotel taxes for 2 years within that zone? Because if we can do that, then those savings on those taxes could be given to the people that reserve the rooms and rent the cars. Because this hotel and the rentals of the cars and everything going on at the hotel in the airport, including the concessions, is a much needed situation that needs to be reformed. So I would say that what's happening here should be given to a committee to handle the entire problem with the hotel rather than just micromanage issues separately. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spindler. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you very much. And colleagues, we need 12 votes here, so we're going to move rather quickly on this issue here. Could I ask Valerie Flores, another city attorney, personnel, to come on up and give us a quick synopsis of what our action is here today. No offense to those public speakers, but we're not talking about what they were talking about except for the hotel aspect, which, of course, the last speaker just talked about. Please tell us what this is about.
Yes, good morning. Valerie Flores, Assistant City Attorney, and I'm here with Basha Jankowski, Deputy City Attorney.
Morning.
Briefly, back in 2007, the City Council passed an ordinance requiring hotels along Century Boulevard to pay their workers a living wage. The city provides benefits to those hotels by virtue of the proximity to the LAX. The hotels launched a successful petition drive against the original ordinance, and so the council, under the charter, had the choice of either repealing the ordinance or submitting it to a vote. And the council repealed the original ordinance. The mayor's office and then the council then met with the hotels and got some agreement from some of the hotels about some concessions they would like to see from the city in exchange for paying a higher rate to its workers. As a result, the City Council then passed a second ordinance, again in 2007, and the original ordinance was scheduled to be published, but some of the hotels who were not on board with the agreed-upon language filed a lawsuit and got an injunction from the Superior Court in Los Angeles. The City Attorney's Office then took the case up to the Court of Appeal and successfully defended the second ordinance. But as a result of the lawsuit, the publication of the ordinance didn't occur until well after the ordinance was originally scheduled to be published. It was about a year and a half later that the ordinance actually was published. And as a result of the delay in publication, there were some incongruities in the ordinance when it got published because some of the dates were off in that they anticipated that the ordinance would be published a year and a half earlier. In addition, over the course of time, the city had some experience with the ordinance and noticed that there were some administrative fixes that were in order. And lastly, the city, because of the budget constraints and personnel issues, still have not completed certain aspects of its obligations under the original ordinance. So so we've now prepared an amendment that fixes the dates, makes some administrative improvements, and I'm going to allow Basha Jankowski to explain briefly in detail what those are.
Yes, briefly, we had referenced the Century Corridor BID, and we've changed that to Gateway to LAP BID. For the workforce training program, we've allowed it to happen within 5 miles. Before it was close proximity, and it was very vague. We removed a reference to CDD involvement with the remote check-in facilities and just allowed LAWA to do that. We've designated the Bureau of Contract Administration to oversee, coordinate the administration, and as Valerie Flores mentioned, we've changed the completion dates to better serve the ordinance. I can go into more detail. Thank you.
I appreciate that both, and colleagues, I would like to ask for a unanimous vote on this ordinance so we can go forward, and then I would, of course, if we unanimously do that, ask the city clerk to expedite the posting of the ordinance. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and take a vote as amended. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. If we can we'll send forthwith, if we can adjourn the special meeting, go back to the regular meeting, and if I know the link to this item was number 16, and Mr. Rosendahl moved to receive and file that?
Just note and file.
Note and file, okay. Mr. City Attorney, we did have a card on this. Mr. Walsh, it was just noted and filed. Did you want to talk on this as well? Okay, he's going to waive that, so we'll go ahead. Please open the roll on noting and filing. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item 27, call special for cards.
Sorry, Mr. Rezar had a request in. What was your item, Mr. Rezar?
32, please.
We can take that out of order without objection. And we do have 2 cards. Do you want to take those first? Do you want to open up?
Sure. I could speak first on the public comment, if that's okay. And thank you. I want to thank the speakers who came on this, soon come up to speak. And colleagues, last week, or not recently, we celebrated Public Works Week. And today we are declaring by this resolution the American Society of Civil Engineers Day. The civil engineers are the people who build our bridges, repair and design all our buildings, make them safe from earthquakes, and much, much more. We have with us today Julia Moy, our Public Works Committee liaison, and she's here with a number of individuals from the American Society of Civil Engineers. I want to thank her and all the city's other engineers for the work they do to keep LA moving, keep it safe, and ensure that we have the public infrastructure we need. So colleagues, thank you for your support on this, and thank you to all our engineers who make and improve our quality of life. So with that, I'll ask that, let's give them a big round of applause. So with that, we could open up to the public speakers.
Jeff Gerard, would you like to come forward as our first speaker?
Thank you. Honorable Council, Honorable City Council members, city officials, and distinguished guests. My name is Jeff Gerard. I'm the chair of the Government Affairs Committee for the Metropolitan Los Angeles branch of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Behind me are several of my fellow civil engineers. We're here to thank the City Council and Mayor's Office for adopting a resolution proclaiming today, Wednesday, June 9th, 2010, American Society of Civil Engineers Day, and encouraging all Angelenos to recognize the contributions of ASCE professionals to maintaining and improving their quality of life. We especially would like to thank Councilmember Huszar for introducing this resolution, as well as Councilmember Labange for seconding the resolution. Civil engineering is everywhere, from the light switch you turn on in the morning to the roads you drive home on in the evening. Civil engineers design and build the systems that bring us water and power. They also build bridges, roads, wastewater treatment plants, and all public works that keep our community operating. Our lives and our infrastructure are inseparable. Civil engineers are developing and implementing some of the most exciting and innovative technologies to solve problems our country is currently facing. From our nation's aging infrastructure to the world's dwindling clean water supply. On behalf of the over 4,000 members of the Metropolitan Los Angeles branch of ASCE, I and my fellow board members would like to thank the City Council and the Mayor for recognizing the contributions of civil engineers. It is important that our elected officials continue supporting infrastructure investment for the future of our city. We look forward to meeting with each of your offices later today to discuss some of these issues on infrastructure and water. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We have also John Walsh.
Wait a second.
Hold on. We're in public comment right now. We have other speakers before you. It's going to be Mr. Cardenas and you after Mr. Walsh comes forward and speaks. He's also here for public comment. Thank you, Mr. Labange. It's going to be okay, I promise.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. This is one of my favorite subjects, incidentally, civil engineering. And if you want to know a job that has disappeared and been outsourced in America, it's engineering. Only 4,000 members. I remember when they built things here, it was designed and engineered on a tabletop in America. Now foreign companies form shell companies. You know what? Want to know where things are designed now? I can tell you where they're designed. They're designed to $6 an hour in China. They're designed to $5.50 in India. They're designed to $4.50 in Japan. They're designed, there are more people working on projects of American engineering projects in Saigon than they are in Los Angeles. And for these morons who start screaming about Jose and Maria coming, who clean our toilets and how we should kick them out, we should be thanking Jose and Maria and all those who come to this country to do our crap work, because our major work, our design work, is no longer being done in America. It is being done overseas. It is not being done. And I'm telling you, if you think that I'm wrong, let them stop me and let them tell you, all of these jobs, the vanishing American is the civil engineer. The jobs are being outsourced. And until we stop that, there isn't going to be anybody here. It makes no sense to even get a degree in engineering unless you want to move to Manila, to Saigon, to Shanghai, where all these jobs are now being done. And at the press of a computer button, their work product ends up in this city within 10 seconds of their leaving. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Cardenas, then Mr. Labange, and then Mr. Huszar.
I just want to thank all of the civil engineers, not only the ones who are here, but all of those men and women who have dedicated themselves to such a very, very important, substantial way in which societies take for granted when things are done well and things are done right. For example, you can have an earthquake. We pray that we don't have one here, but we have them now and again. You can have an earthquake, say, of a 6.8 magnitude, 7.1, or what have you, and then, thank God, you only have maybe a small handful of people who perish, maybe a dozen or so, that has happened in the Southland here in California, where we have high standards. Then you can have an earthquake of similar magnitude somewhere else in the world, and hundreds of thousands of people will lose their lives, and also that entire community in the tune of millions of people will be affected because the infrastructure has been broken. So I just wanted to emphasize how much us as Americans, certainly as Californians, take for granted the effort and the commitment and also the professionalism that creates the society that we take for granted, where you can work or live in a building as tall as this one, but all of a sudden when you feel it rock, you feel pretty comfortable that it's not going to come down on you. Whereas in other countries, people perish by the hundreds of thousands because of the lack of number of professionals and the lack of society's commitment to that professional standard. So I just want to say thank you to all of the civil engineers for your professionalism and for your commitment to a discipline that's not easy. It's not easy to get an engineering degree, although some people get it, we don't know how, like myself, but it's not easy to do because it's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of commitment, and it takes a certain way of thinking and knowing how to tackle problems in order to become a good engineer. So congratulations to all of you and to all of your colleagues.
Mr. Lavange. To follow up on Mr. Cardenas, I want to thank all the engineers. But members, as you may or may not know, in the 1920s there was a City Beautiful movement. And at the City Beautiful movement in Los Angeles, it was focused on improving Los Angeles and their bridges. And those bridges that cross the Los Angeles River from the east side to the west side of the river were designed with great care and affection. The deputy city engineer at the time, Merrill Butler, designed all those bridges. There's 15 famous bridges in Los Angeles. Many years later, there were struggles, and I know Mike Hernandez was a champion for this because of their poor job done on the Main Street Bridge. That bridges were then turned around. Mr. Ferraro, they turned them around like the Buena Vista Bridge. The engineer that handled it wasn't the chief engineer of the Bureau of Engineering. It was a deputy engineer, and the deputy is here today, a great retired Los Angeles City employee. Stand up, Clark Robbins. Give him a big hand. We need your help on the 6th Street Bridge, Clark. 6th Street Bridge, too. And all other bridges. You're a great guy, Clark. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Risa.
Well, thank you very much, colleagues, and again, thank you to our civil engineers. You know, we take a lot of our roads and bridges for granted and all the public infrastructure, but there are people behind these projects that made it possible, designing them and constructing them, so thank you very much. And I do want to remind us all that this country is actually facing a shortage in the future of people who are going into the math and science fields, and so as a shortage, we recognize the shortage. I do want to encourage our young people to look at those areas of study. This country will be facing a shortage in the future. We need more engineers so that we could continue to build a strong country and a strong city. Thank you very much once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rizar. With that, let's go ahead and open the roll and close the roll and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
On that vote, we thank you, the engineers. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience and being here as well. We do have some other items on the desk, but I think if we can, Mr. Cardenas, you want to take up 34 out of order? Is that? You wanted to be sure to be here for that? Is that correct? 234, okay. We're going to need to go in closed session for item 34. We will be coming back into open session, so we appreciate folks' patience, and I know there's some more cards. We'll come back for those momentarily, but we are going to go while Mr. Cardenas has to represent the city on the Board of Sanitation, County Sanitation Board, and would like to be here for this one. So if we can please go into closed session in accordance with California state law, we'll come back into open session shortly thereafter. We shouldn't be longer than 20 minutes on this, folks, so just sit tight and we'll be back. in open session. I want to thank members of the public who were waiting. We have 3 items that are left. We'll wait for folks to come back in. Can I ask the Sergeant at Arms, were there any folks that were out there waiting? Okay. They're coming in. Okay. Mr. Walsh and Mr. Spindler, I know, had cards in on items 27, 28, and 29. If we can take those up at the same time. And Mr. Walsh, if you'd like to come forward on item 27, thank you for your patience. And item 28 and item 29, you can speak on all 3 back to back, and we'll consider them together.
John Walsh, blogging at Hollywood Highlands, HIGHLANDS.org. I spell it because we get 500 a week unsuccessful server requests. Mr. President, you said it was going to be 20 minutes.
My apologies. Sometimes people get loquacious. My apologies.
That's okay. I long ago given up believing what you told me, so it was only 45 minutes. Anyway, it was only 45 minutes. But as far as 26 is concerned, we're...
Sorry, I had 27, 28, and 29.
27, 28, and 29. Right. Dodger Stadium, again, we have the MTA subsidizing the Dodgers. We have you promoting the Lakers, and we have, this is a question of traffic management services provided by LADOT relative to the use of MTA's funds for traffic management. Again, subsidizing. I don't need the full 2 minutes, but I'd like to adjourn this meeting in memory of the 15-year-old boy who was murdered by border guards on the border, the Mexican border, the 15-year-old boy that was murdered. He was shot dead. They claimed he was throwing a rock at them.
I'm sorry, sir, and I know you're going to get mad at me about this, but that's not item 27, 28, or 29, and if you could, you can speak about those, and you still have another minute. But we appreciate that, and thank you for pulling that out.
In his memory.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Walsh. Let's open the roll. Sorry, Mr. Spindler here. I don't see him. Let's open the roll on 27, 28, and 29. Please close the roll and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Thank you. That is, oh, sorry, those are passed. Next order of business, please. Forthwith on 27 without objection.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those are posted and referred.
And the desk is clear.
Okay. Any announcements? No announcements. Can I ask everybody please rise in chambers for our adjourning motions? Mr. Walsh, if you want to pass on any of that information, we'd be happy to do that adjournment in a future meeting. If we can ask everybody to please rise. And Mr. Rosendahl, I'd like to recognize for our first adjourning motion.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I rise, and I know we all rise for adjourning motions, and this is a good friend of mine named Stephen Rivers. Stephen Rivers just passed away yesterday morning. He was born February 17th, 1955. He studied philosophy and theology at Fairfield University in Connecticut. Rivers began his career working for the United Farm Workers Union, serving as an organizer of the Great Boycott in New England before coming to California to serve as an assistant to the late UFW President Cesar Chavez. Rivers went on to work for Tom Hayden, serving as his press secretary and later as his chief of staff in Sacramento when he was elected to the California legislature. He was involved in campaigns of California Governor Jerry Brown and the presidential campaigns of Senator Gary Hart, Senator Bob Kerrey, and Governor Michael Dukakis. In 1982, Rivers was the campaign manager for former California Governor Gray Davis's first campaign for state legislature. Rivers went to work for many years with Jane Fonda, serving as her press spokesperson and working with her on a number of entertainment, business, and political and charitable projects. Before launching his own firm in 1994, Rivers worked for 4 years as Creative Artists Agency, the CAA, where he served as the company's first communications and public relations executive. At CAA, Rivers also oversaw the agency's governmental affairs, where he worked with the the entertainment industry and corporate clients, as well as on political and nonprofit and international projects. He also organized events for California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, First Lady Maria Shriver, President Bill Clinton, First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton, South African President Nelson Mandela, King Abdullah and Queen Rana of Jordan, former Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and the late Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and the late Pope John Paul II. Rivers also worked on special projects and helped to organize events for the Mideast Peace Organization, Seeds of Peace. He also worked with Vanity Fair magazine and the Hollywood Women's Political Committee, the Magic Johnson Foundation, and the music industry's Rock the Vote organization. In 2006, Rivers worked on the U.S. media launch of Product Red, the brand created by Bono and Bobby Schreiber to generate profits for the Global Fund's AIDS prevention and treatment program in Africa. Rivers traveled to Cuba more than 24 times in the past 10 years, working on cultural exchange projects and other initiatives to improve U.S.-Cuban relations. In 2009, Rivers helped Colombian singer-songwriter, humanitarian activist Juan organize his Paz Sin Fronteras concert in Havana, which was attended by more than 1 million people. Steve died early Tuesday morning from metastasis of prostate cancer throughout his whole system. He was just 55 years old. He's survived by his mother, Ellen Rivers, 3 sisters, a niece, 3 nephews, who did so much to take care of him in the last year, a godson and many close friends who loved him very much. I was just with him a few weeks ago at a Robert F. Kennedy program that he helped put together over at the Skirball Center. We spoke a little bit, and frankly, he was looking forward to seeing my chickens and getting some eggs, but at that point it was too late. Funeral services will be held at Mount Carmel in his hometown of Springfield, Massachusetts. Arrangements are pending. A Los Angeles memorial service will be held at a later date. May he rest in peace.
Thank you. Are there any other adjourning motions? If not, we'll next be in session on Friday at 10 a.m. Thank you all very much. We'll be sure to make that adjourning motion in a future meeting. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. With that, Mr. Clerk, will you please call the roll? This meeting of Los Angeles City Council is adjourned. Hope everybody has a great day, and